How are you?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Sophia. Good morning. Hi, Anita.
Hello.
How was your weekend?
Pretty good.
Are you studying a lot for the parciales?
Yes.
It's a crucial time. We have a month. And so, today we are going to discuss the organization of the rest of the classes, okay?
Okay, yes, I wanted to ask you about that also. So,
Right. Yes, and the dates for the colloquios as well. So you can start organizing yourselves. Shall we wait some more minutes for the rest to join in? Who is preparing the class about the utopian novel?
we.
Okay. I have thought about the 3rd of October. Can that be correct? I mean, is that all right?
Yes.
Yes, no problem.
Okay. It's a Monday because the next Monday it's a holiday, the 10th.
Yes.
And then what about the ones prepared in crime fiction? Are they here?
Yes. Hello.
Hello. What about the 19th of October?
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that's right.
Because 1984 is going to take us some classes, right? Good. Hello. And los coloquios serían, a ver, nuestra última clase, digamos, teórica, sería el 26 de octubre, miércoles. Entonces, el 31, el 2, y el 7 vamos a hacer los coloquios. Las notas en general se entregan el 4, pero nos podemos tomar un día más, no toda la semana, pero un día más. Yo ya pregunté para poder entregar las notas, que nos va a servir, ¿sí? Así que después cuando estemos en clase, yo les voy a dar, como hicimos con el examen oral anterior, voy a pasar los horarios, la fecha y ustedes se anotan, ¿sí? Bien.
Profe, entonces la fecha de coloquio sería el 7 y...
No, los coloquios son el 31 de octubre, el 2 de noviembre, 31 es lunes, el 2 de noviembre, que es miércoles, y el 7 de noviembre.
Genial.
¿Sí? Entonces se anotan, vamos a ir repartiendo, porque por suerte son unos cuantos, entre esas 3 fechas. ¿Sí? Bien. Okay, shall we start? Good. Well, we were discussing about the Middle Ages, general characteristics of the period, right? I'm going to mention key points that you should take into account. Of course, that it's a God-centered period, that we have the Norman conquest, and they brought to England the new language, French, and we have a period, let's say that 3 languages were used. Latin, especially for the church and for education, French for the court and entertainment, literature, and English, of course, the Old English, that remained for the lower classes, and of course the Anglo-Saxon, no? With the years, Old English and French were blended into a language that is called Middle English. We have this introduction of the Romance, that is the new genre at the court, the deeds of the knight, with all the characteristics of the feudal system, right? So in the Romance, or in all kinds of productions in the Middle Ages, we have the values of this new culture. That is to say, Christianity as the center, Christian elements, feudalism also as the social organization and all the values in connection to feudalism, and of course the hero is the knight. In the Romances, all the characters are related to the aristocracy, because the Romance was a literature of entertainment for the court, right? And we have the introduction of the women as the audience, especially at the court. That's why we have another element that is courtly love. In general, in most of the Romances, this courtly love was platonic, right? That is to say, this idea that the knight was in love of the lady. He sort of worshipped the lady, right? And of course, if they married, platonic love ended up being, of course, also the love of the flesh, but within marriage, because everything is related to the laws of the church, right? Good. We also have, we haven't mentioned this, but just for you to know that the common people and the tradition of the Old English, right? With the years, they started composing romances in Old English with the heroes, let's say, of the Old English tradition. Why is this? Because when we talk years, we are going to talk about decades and centuries. So there was a blending also of the Old English epic with the Romance. Romances composed in English for the lower classes, with heroes like Havelock the Dane, Havelock el Danés, por ejemplo. Okay, we have said that all these romances were written in verse at the beginning, in octosyllabic couplets because Middle English was a syllabic language because it was a blending with French. We have the introduction of rhyme because now French is full of vowels as opposed to the Old English that was full of consonants. Remember that in the Old English we have other strategies to create rhythm: alliteration, repetition, caning, caesura, exactly, this number of stresses in a line. But now we have Middle English and French, which is full of vowels, especially the words ended with vowels, so this would favor rhyme. So here we have, if you remember when we started, when we discussed the characteristics of poetry with Annabel Lee, we discussed rhyme, we discussed rhyme patterns. When you have the repetition of the same vowel, you wrote A, B, right? And also foot, meter and foot, exactly. So in a line, you counted the stresses and the number of syllables. Of course, that in French, the main, let's say, pattern would be octosyllabic. That is to say, 8 syllables in a line. Whereas in English, we will have the English meter, that is pentameter, or decasyllabic, 10 syllables in a line. Anyhow, we cannot talk about syllables in English. We can talk about syllables in Middle English. But today we say pentameter because there are 5 stresses, right? And because of the stresses in most of the words in English, what we have, the most common is the iambic. Iambic would be the foot. That is to say, the pattern of stressed and stressed. Iambic would be unstressed, stressed. See? And if we count the number of stresses, we have 5. So we have 5 stresses in a line. That's why it's called pentameter. You know, penta means 5. Is this clear? Okay, so if we count the number of stresses that are unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, we have 10. And we have 5 stresses, 5 stressed words. That's why you make up 10, right? So throughout the Canterbury Tales, the prologue of the tales, the prologue of the Wife of Bath, and the Wife of Bath tale, the 3 of them, are written in iambic pentameter, rhyming in couplets. What is a couplet? 2 lines, 2 succeeding lines that rhyme. That is to say, A, B, C, D. See? Those are couplets. So, this is important. Most of the verses in the Canterbury Tales and in the rest of medieval literature are written in iambic pentameter, rhyming in couplets. This has a name. They are called heroic couplets because most of them were romances. That's why they are called heroic couplets, right? Is this clear? Yeah, just a second, please. Okay, I'm back. Mi perra que si no le abro la puerta para salir al patio empieza a ladrar. Bien. Okay, is this clear? Remember that the characteristic of composition in Middle Ages, especially at the beginning, it was religious, of communal composition, because we have the monks transcribing, right? There we have also censorship. There was no, you don't have this idea of copyright. So every monk would change, adapt, and take out everything that was not connected or related to the church or was some kind of heresy. And maybe a man would start translating and copying a book, and then another man will follow. So in the same book, you will have different styles, different handwritings. That's why you have this idea of communal composition. When things were recited orally, we have this communal composition of the community. This happened with the ballad of Robin Hood. Robin Hood reached us, let's say, continue generation by generation as a ballad that was recited, because he was like a legend. It was like, remember, the ballads were songs sung and composed with in relation to some event or some famous character in the community. And that will be the ballad of Robin Hood that was recited, and through the years elements were added. That's why we have this communal composition, right? And another characteristic is that they were anonymous, for two reasons. For this, that was of a communal composition, and also because to write a name in any production would be like a sin, because you wanted fame, right? This will happen, this will change towards the end of the Middle Ages. Chaucer, with the Canterbury Tales, is a transitional figure, because we are towards the end of the Middle Ages. The church was corrupt, the church lost all the crusades, we have the fall of the Roman Empire in the east, the fall of Constantinople, that was attacked by the Ottoman Empire, by the Turks. So the beginning of the Middle Ages is marked by the fall of the Roman Empire in the West, the fall of Rome, see? In 400, I believe it was 50, I don't remember the exact name. So that will be the beginning of the Middle Ages in the continent, see? In, let's say, Europe. The beginning of the Middle Ages in the British Isles is 1066, with the invasion of the Normans. And the fall of the Roman Empire in the east, because Constantinople was attacked by the Ottoman Empire and the Turks, would be 1453. That would be the end of the Middle Ages and the beginning of the Renaissance. Of course, these dates are agreed by the historians. It's not that in one day everything changed, of course, no? And others would say that the beginning of the Renaissance can be marked by the discovery of America. Because this enlightenment, that there was a new world, no? Anyhow, Well, and then we are going to talk about the Renaissance. I don't want you to confuse you. I was saying that Chaucer is a transitional figure because he was a diplomat. He traveled to France, to Italy, especially to Italy, because in Florence we have the beginning or the brewing of the Renaissance, humanist ideas, right? We also have this idea of composing, and compositions were of individual character. That's why we have a book with a name, right? We also have the printing press. This allowed two things: that the books were no longer controlled by the church. People could have access. When I say people, I would say, of course, the aristocracy, and some people that were not much of the lower class, because the lower classes were illiterate, right? But anyhow, with the printing press, we have a massive access to books, and the ones that printed these books did not belong to the church. So any kinds of books could be, let's say, spread. Is this clear? Yes, especially Chaucer, that we know, although he was quite religious, he introduced a deep criticism to the church, right? Bien. With this transition, we also have that in the Renaissance, they read the classics, that is to say, Roman and Greek mythology. They wanted to go back to this ancient tradition that was so much left aside during the Middle Ages.
Yes, it's like they've retaken the idea of Anglo-Saxons, this idea of the enemies as the monster, the dragon, all these mystical figures.
Right. And also this question of humanism was important because they would, let's say, consider the individual hero or god or goddess with vices, the theater that was, let's say, secular, because remember that during the Middle Ages and the beginning of the theater was in relation to passages from the Bible, right? That is why, if you remember the last class when this group developed and told you some of the stories in the Canterbury Tales, this, let's say, very good class telling you about different genres of the stories. In some of the stories, they mention characters from the Bible, like Samson, for example, but also they mention Hercules, right? That was of Greek mythology. So we have in Chaucer this blending of the two traditions, right? Bien. In the Canterbury Tales, in the prologue of the book, we have all the, let's say, description and narration of these pilgrims that gathered together to go to Canterbury. And Chaucer described each of the pilgrims in detail. This is also something in connection to the transition. The pilgrims were not stereotypes, as in the romances. They were individual characters, fully described. So we have the introduction of realism. Remember that he wanted to describe or present like a picture of the Middle Ages. We have a gallery of characters, a gallery of genres, a gallery also of dialects. When I say dialects, the miller would not talk in the same way the knight would speak. So he made the effort to reproduce the language of these different people, these different discourses. And of course, one of the characters is the wife of Bath. Is the only woman that does not belong to the church in the pilgrimage. She is very rich. She has traveled to Jerusalem, to Europe, right? So she was quite worldly, right? That's why she could talk about marriages and places. She was well traveled. That was not so common to present a woman independent, because she was a widow, so she could speak for herself and she could travel alone. That is another characteristic that is important. So we have the description of an independent woman, right? In her prologue, the wife of Bach's prologue, again, iambic pentameter, rhyming in couplets, heroic couplets. She talks about marriage in a realistic way. And she criticizes, in a way, she criticizes the Bible, but saying, okay, because it was frowned upon. A woman that was married 5 times was frowned upon, right? Although it was everything within marriage to have 5 husbands, right? It was not so common. That's why she says, the Bible does not say anything about virginity. That is to say, if everything is within the institution of marriage, and the Bible does not say anything about the number of times that she could marry. You see, so in that way, she justified herself. And remember that in this Wife of Bath prologue, she talks about the you all the time. So we have the narrator, that is herself, the wife of Bath, and the you would be the audience. An audience that was mainly a male in this pilgrimage, and the other members that were female belonged to the church, right? But specifically when she mentions the you, she talks about you men, because what's the purpose of the prologue? What's the function of this text?
A critic could be.
A criticism. A critic is the person,
yes.
right? A criticism. Okay. To marriage, to the church, and to the way men behave, right? So the function also has, it's of course the criticism is critical, but it is also didactic, because she wants to introduce a teaching to these men to have successful marriages, right? And what is she saying to these men? What would be her teaching?
That women want power over the man, the husband.
Exactly, right? Exactly. And she says, I manipulated my husbands. The first three were old and rich, so in a way she inherited their money, right? And she says that with certain abilities, he manipulated them. Some abilities were related to being, let's say, how can I say it? Being really capable in sex, right? In bed, right? So in that way, she manipulated them because she was quite experienced at in that point. And the other way was manipulating them with the discourse when, let's say, she turned the argument or the fights towards her benefit and allowed this idea that they were lying, they had, or they were faulty, but not herself, right? Then she says that he only knew a woman after marriage because before that they had secrets. They couldn't or they didn't show their personality, their true personality, but within marriage, once they are in the institution of marriage, they show their true self, right? And then with the other two husbands, she says that now she was rich but old and not so beautiful because of old age. She says that was why their husbands, let's say, cheated her or mistreated her, right? So the situation was inverted. Now she received what she had done before, no? It says, but age that comes to poison everything has taken all my beauty and my pitch. That is to say, my ability. And something that she added is that as they were young, she was truly in love with them. That's why she says, I took them for love and not for wealth. That is, I'm reading line 330, more or less, no? And she talks about this young man that would mistreat her, that would also read a book about women that were unfaithful. So he criticized women all the time. He had a very big fight. And in that fight, he would hit her. That's why at the beginning, in the prologue, she is described as a deaf woman. And she says that she got deaf, that is to say, sorda, because of this big fight and because this young man hit her in the ear. So at the beginning, in this description of marriage, we have violence, right? Gender violence, if you want, for this. Anyhow, when she was hit, she pretended to faint, to be dead, and this young man was so afraid, feared this, that after that he promised her not to hit her again, that they would have a good marriage. And this would be the end of the prologue by saying after that we were, let's say, good together, good to each other, and he allowed me to have the control of the marriage. So in a way, although he was violent to her, she managed by pretending, again, to have the control of marriage. And the key word in this last, in the prologue, secure, and this is the moral message. That's why I've said this prologue has a didactic purpose. Secured yourself the sovereignty in wedlock, that is to say, in marriage. The key word here is sovereignty. And when he said, my own and trusted wife, do as you please for all the rest of life, but guard your honor and my good state, he's saying, although, okay, I will give you sovereignty, but you will guard my honor as a man, right? And also you will take care of my property, right? Because when you were a widow, you inherited money from your dead husbands. But once you married, your husbands would inherit and share your property, right? So why I'm saying that this word sovereignty is key, because sovereignty includes the teaching for this male in the pilgrimage, and also the theme of the wife of Bath's tale. See? The tale that she's going to narrate. Remember about this knight raping a woman, no? Being sent in a quest, and the final answer to this quest is this: sovereignty over their husbands. Bien. As regards the genre of the wife of Bath's tale, right? Not the prologue, the tale. What can you say? Who is the protagonist in the tale?
The night.
The night.
So, which is the genre?
Romantic.
Not romantic.
No.
It's a romance. Remember that romantic means something else. Okay, it's a romance. That is to say, a story about the deeds of a knight. So, let's go through the characteristics of the romance. We have the character, the knight, a lady in distress, right? What about the setting? Remember that last class we discussed
Indefinite.
between the epic and the romance? I'm going through those characteristics. Yes, Ludmila?
Indefinite setting.
Indefinite setting, right? Somewhere within Christendom. ¿Sí? En algún lugar de la cristiandad. In the forest, right? Good. Here we have something that is important because we have elements of the Celtic tradition and the French romances, because although it was Celtic, this legend of King Arthur was taken to France, no? So what we know is that we have an indefinite setting, but within Arthur's court and Arthur's grounds, no? Because we have Arthur and the queen that is mentioned is Guinevere, no? Ginebra. Is this clear? The first line of the tale says, when good King Arthur ruled in ancient days, a king that every Briton loves to praise, this was a land brimful of fairy folk. The elf queen, this is also very important. The elf queen is not just Guinevere, but is of elf origin. So this is clearly the Celtic legend. Los elfos, no? We have also the element of ancient days, fairy folk, elfin queen. So we have also elements of which other genre?
The fairy tale.
The fairy tale, right. So it's clearly a romance with elements of a fairy tale. The knight's deed, let's say, takes place in the forest. So it's characteristic of the romance and also the fairy tale, because remember I told you that the romances are, let's say, how can I say, a prequel or has greatly influenced the fairy tales. No? Bien. Something very important, we have the first criticism to the church here in the first page that says, the elf queen and her courtiers joined and broke their elfy dance on many a green mead. And so was the opinion once I read. Hundreds of years ago, in days of yore, but no one now sees fairies anymore. So there are no more fairies in the woods. Why not? For now, the saintly charity and prayer of holy friars. ¿Qué son friars? You know the word?
Yes, they were a member of the church.
Right, monjes serían, ¿no? So, Chaucer here is explaining why there are no more fairies in the woods. Because holy friars seem to have purged the air. Los friars, remember, fairies belong to pagan, let's say, mythology, to the pagan, let's say, field. So now we have friars purging, purgando el aire. So the church, fortunately, no, that would be the ironic tone here, had purged the air, so you will not find any fairies anymore. But same, the church, with copying these legends and books, have taken out all pagan elements. That is the criticism here. So we won't have fairies, but we will have true knights in the forest. Then later on it says that's the reason why there are no fairies. And look at this. Women can now go safely up and down. So now that there are no pagan elements in the forest, women can go safely. This is also ironic because what happens in the story?
Yeah, because the ones that were in the women were in danger because of the knights, not because of the fairies.
Because of the knights, because of the monks, because of the priests, because this feudal system and Christian system that is not so pure as in the books or as they preached, right? everything that you have in the books, in the Bibles, in the church is ideal. Chaucer is saying that this does not happen in real life. No? Yeah. Good. And look at this. Women can now go safely up and down by every bush and under every tree. There is no other incubus. The incubus, what is an incubus?
Werewolf.
It could be a werewolf, but the incubus would be an angel, a devil angel, an evil angel, part of the angels belonging to hell, that would rape women, and they would make women pregnant, and in that way, see, they would have an evil son. See, just to mention, Merlin was born out of an incubus. So this is another reference to Celtic legend, no? Bien. There is no other incubus but he. Who is he here?
Lucifer.
Sorry?
Lucifer, the devil.
The devil, Lucifer, right? Or in this story, I mean, this is also having a double entendre. Of course, it's the devil, and it's also in reference to the night. No? That is not ideal, that is not perfect, not a true Christian. Well, of course, we know the knight rapes the lady, so he's taken to court in front of Arthur and Guinevere. What does Arthur do? Because of the legends, the laws of the court, this knight should be killed, right? As a punishment. But instead of that, what does Arthur do?
He lets his woman decide whatever she wants to do with him.
Not any woman.
No, his woman.
Wife, Guinevere, exactly, Ramiro. So here at the court, in this marriage, we have again the element of sovereignty. She decides what to do with this man. He gave the queen the case. She could choose. And of course, she chooses to send this knight into a quest. This is another characteristic of the romance. Going on a quest to get, an answer, to get the Holy Grail, remember, different quests. In this case, the answer of what women wanted, no? In a day and a year, he had to come back. Well, he starts asking, right? He cannot get the answer until he finds
a witch.
A witch, a fairy, because he sees them dancing in a circle. Again, this is ironic. The forest has not been purged completely. The church cannot purge, cannot, let's say, erase the past. So we have the fairies dancing, and then this old hag, that would be the witch, no? He says, I will give you the answer as long as you do what I want. But he does not tell, she does not tell what she wants. No? So she gave him the answer and they went together to the court. This is also important because he gives his answer in front of the queen and the king inside the court. No? So the queen says, all right, you are saved. No? And in front of the court, this old woman says, you gave your word. Now you have to do what I want. See? So this is important because this is not in the forest. This is in front of the court. This is official. And now he needs to prove his honor. Again, I mean, he cannot, let's say no, because if not, he's proving he's not a true knight again, right? So of course, he's forced to marry. What was his problem? Why is it that he does not want to marry?
An old wife.
Sorry,
An
Mariana?
old wife.
She's old and
Ugly.
ugly. Hmm? So again, we have the values of a period. The damsel in distress, the princess, they were all young and beautiful, right? And he starts talking. Again, we have a didactic purpose. That is a characteristic of the Middle Ages. Everything needed to have a moral, a teaching. So this old lady talks about one thing. This is on page 162. She talks about what is to be a gentleman. And she says, to have a gentle birth, being a noble and having a title that you have inherited is in vain, because you cannot claim that you are a gentleman because of your ancestors. You only prove that you are a gentleman because of your deeds, not because of what your ancestors did, right? This is also a teaching. Then she talks about poverty, another element in which she teaches. This is 165. She says, the poor can dance and sing in relief of having nothing that will tempt a thief. This is also something that you have in the Bible, no? And I would say I would criticize this as well, right? Because this is something that the church has used to justify poverty and people that are rich. ¿Sí? Dichosos sean los pobres, que de ellos será el reino de los cielos. I mean, it's just it's a kind of resignation. I mean, why do I need to be poor to go to heaven, right?
And maybe romanticize poverty.
Exactly, that's the point. So if you are poor, be happy because you will go to heaven, right? And you will sleep sound because you don't have to worry about any thief taking your things. Well, that's another teaching that is connected with Christianity, no? And then the other teaching is about old age. that says, what do you prefer? An unfaithful, young and beautiful lady, or a faithful, old and ugly wife? What would you say about this? So, all young, es como decir todas las rubias son tontas, ¿no? Entonces decís, all young and beautiful women are unfaithful. But if you are old and ugly, you are faithful, but because you won't have the opportunity to be unfaithful because you are ugly and old, you see? This is terrible. So
maybe she wants to criticize the stereotypical women, the different connotations attached to a particular woman because of her characteristics.
Okay, so Chaucer is being ironic and he's criticizing the value and the stereotypes of the period. Great. So we can have two readings here, right? The ironic tone of the narrator and the, let's say, patriarchal view of the time. And this feminist or anti-feminist criticism would say that within the wife of Bath, we also have a patriarchal view. This question that even women reproduce patriarchy, no? Right. Because finally, what we can say when she says, okay, do what you pleases, I mean, he doesn't choose, I prefer an old and ugly woman or a young and beautiful. He finally says, do as you pleases. So here we have sovereignty again in marriage, right? And because of that, as she was a witch, she turns out to be young and beautiful. Again, this patriarchal view in the values of the age. So, towards the end of the story, he's not punished, he's rewarded. Huh? That would be the feminist reading, no, or anti-feminist if you want, right? But he has learned the lesson. He's rewarded, but he has learned the lesson. So the key point throughout all the story is sovereignty being the key to a successful marriage. But we don't have the punishment for the crime. The punishment here would be only to lose your own sovereignty, right? Good. With this, we finish Middle Ages, right? And the characteristic of this specific poetry. And I've chosen this because it's a blending of poetry and romance, and also has a very interesting reading. In the parcial or in the final exam, I will ask you maybe to compare the characteristics of fairy tales, this contradiction of two different, let's say, cultures that clash, the criticism to the church, well, everything that I have mentioned today. So on Wednesday, si todo va bien, digamos, yo voy a dar clase, no me adhiero al paro, a menos que esté cerrado, no sé, ¿sí? So on Wednesday, you have some files about the sonnet. I will introduce the characteristics of the Renaissance, and the sonnets that is key in this period. You have, we are going to work about whose list to hand, I know what is an eind, and my mistress's eye are nothing like the sun. Solamente vamos a discutir esas dos poesías, ¿sí? They are sonnets, of course. So I will discuss the characteristic, and then you have all the theory about the sonnet. And there is another, sorry. Within the theory, sorry, I forgot. You have on page 4, a summer's day, and on page 5, the dark lady. See, 4 sonnets, I forgot about that. See?
¿Cómo se llamaba el primero, profe?
Está todo en la misma file que dice The Sonnets como título. En la página 1 tenés Whose List to Hunt y My Mistress' Eyes. Después tenés en la página 2 la teoría del soneto. En la página 3 vamos a diferenciar lo que es el Italian sonnet, de donde se trajo, y después el Shakespearean sonnet, que le hace algunas modificaciones a la estructura original. Por eso vamos a dar el primero, que es de Wyatt, y los otros son de Shakespeare. A Summer's Day, que está en la página 4, y Dark Lady, que está en la página 5. Y con eso terminamos de Renaissance, porque solamente vamos a hablar de sonnet. Pero estamos en la unidad de Poetry, ¿no? Y después pasamos a la unidad de Novel con Dystopian Novel.
Miss, I have a question as regards to our presentation, that is next Monday. Do we have to deal just with the theory of utopian novels and novels in general, or do we have to deal with 1984 too?
Introduce the definition of the dystopian. Well, you have to first define utopian or utopy, right? The utopian novel, so as to just the definition with one example, and then the dystopia to contrast the two genres, right? Definition, general characteristics, and then introduce 1984, just the introduction, because
Okay.
we are going to discuss all together because it's not easy, right? That novel is quite complex and it has a lot of elements, but just to say why 1984 is a dystopian novel.
Great.
Right? Okay. All right. Any other questions? Voy a repetir para los que ingresaron después. Bueno, miércoles que viene tenemos clase 3 del 10, la clase de Dystopian Novel, y si tenemos tiempo voy a introducir algunos elementos de 1984. En el campus ustedes tienen una guía de análisis de 1984. ¿Para qué? No es para que respondan cada pregunta, no, sino para que puedan dirigir la mirada y la lectura a esos elementos que son importantes, ¿sí? Después, el 12 del 10 y el 17 del 10 vamos a seguir con 1984. El 19 del 10, la clase de Crime Fiction, tienen en esa unidad para leer The Mousetrap, que es una obra de teatro de Agatha Christie. Les va a parecer que es larga, pero se lee muy rápido. porque es full of dialogues y no es tan denso. Claro, sí, el 12 del 10 es feriado, Aldana. Sí, sí, sí. Perdón, vamos a discutir de Dystopian Novel el 3 del 10, el 5 del 10 y el 17 del 10, porque el 12 es feriado. Ahí está. Y después el 19 empezamos, los chicos van a dar la clase de Crime Fiction y las clases que siguen vamos a discutir de Mousetrap. Y dijimos que nuestra última clase es el 26 de octubre, miércoles 26 de octubre, última clase. Y el 31, el 2 y el 7 van a ser las fechas de coloquio. Yo les voy a pasar un papel para que se anoten, o el 31, o el 2, o el 7. Vamos. Ok. Well, see you on Wednesday. Then.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, teacher.